single classroom in this beautiful building, and we only missed one classroom. So we'd like to share some of our glows and our grows with you guys. Ms. Berry, start us off with a glow.
The first glow, the focal point was to look for alignment of activities to the objective, and we are happy to report that 90% of the classrooms we visited were demonstrating alignment of activities to the objective.
Our first grow was that terms for current lessons should be posted for scholars to reference on the focus wall more consistently to help achieve the objective.
Can you guys talk a little bit about that?
So as we were doing our walks, we heard scholars like asking how to spell words, what words meant. I know the definitions usually aren't on the focus wall or on the word wall, but if they were up there, then they would be more accessible for that particular lesson.
And we saw some terms that weren't normally used in that specific content that having the reference on the wall could have been helpful.
And in terms of the delivery, not having those terms on there, how did that impact the delivery and the flow of the lesson?
It slows it down with them, raising their hand to ask for clarification on a term or clarification on how to spell something. It pauses the flow of the lesson.
Our glow, another glow, back to a glow. 2 classrooms were utilizing their do now to actually set up the objective for that day by reviewing the previous material.
And then a grow, this is just a consideration. We kind of noticed that it could have maybe been helpful to unpack the objectives a little bit more on the BBC as a constant reference throughout the lesson for scholars.
And I did not tell them to write that.
Just because I know I personally, I like to do it on my smartboard, not on the BBC, but we noticed that as we were watching lessons, it was hard not having it there, not knowing what you had talked about. When an outsider comes in, or if a scholar, didn't write it on their ladder and want to look back, having it posted might have been helpful.
Our next glow, 3 classrooms practicing gestures. Group work appeared to have 100% engagement on their way to achieve the objective. The mirror words and gestures that we saw were awesome.
What percentage of that would be 3 out of 14?
3 out of
No,
10.
we saw 10.
3 out of 10?
30%.
And you said that was a glow? Or
That it
grow?
was
The
glow
glow
of
of
it. They did it well.
The glow of
was
it was
the
that
glow,
it was done very well, and it brought a lot of engagement out in the scholars and helped to improve the engagement.
And we do recognize that we were only there for 5 to 10 minutes, so you can't guarantee that every single second of every single day is this elaborate play.
Whole
put on.
brain.
Yeah.
Whole brain, whole class.
It would be if Kelly
All
Marshall
day.
All
day.
No, that's overstimulus. Kids would be learning anything.
So another grow that we would like to point out, be sure that key terms and skills in the objective, for example, identify, demonstrate, are the actual skills that are being used in all parts of the lesson. So can I just do both of these grows together? Because they come together.
Yeah, they do.
Because in the next grow, when doing a lesson with a 2-part objective, consider labeling in the ladder where each objective is being met. So what we noticed was sometimes there were 2-part objectives, and the first portion of the objective was in the I do, and then the second portion of the objective was in the we do and the you do. But we wanted to see that the objective was being met throughout the lesson.
And then these others, they're kind of smaller things, but approximately 70% of the classes were adhering to the 5 rules regardless of activities happening. I know we want a 100%, but when we say 70%, we mean that it was obvious that the control over the classroom was there, even if they were doing an engaging activity where the scholars were doing something, they were adhering to the 5 rules and speaking because they had permission. Last 2 areas.
Okay. One classroom demonstrated the ability to make content relatable to everyday life and engage scholars while doing so.
It was a very
relatable
yes.
Lesson where it was related to their daily lives, and they were able to bring it back to the classroom and apply that to the skill that they were learning.
To enhance clarity.
Oh, and then we also saw 2 classrooms that offered a chance for scholars to demonstrate their knowledge up on the board in front of their peers. So we were very impressed and we liked that aspect.
How did that, don't go judge, life is judgmental. So why did it prove to be effective?
Because the scholars were showing that they had interpreted the modeling correctly from the I do, and then they were able to reproduce it in front of their peers.
What was the rest of the kids doing?
Observing,
100% of the rest of them were observing?
snapping.
Alrighty. Questions?
That's what fifth grade does when they agree or something.
Gotcha, okay. Questions, comments, or feedback? Feedback, questions, comments, or feedback?
I have a question. So what happens, so, like this focus point was alignment of activities to the objective. Like what happens if they're like going in a room and there's no activities in that 5 minutes? If that makes any sense.
So, yeah, that did happen. There were a couple of them where we walked in and we saw them unpacking the objective or reviewing the do now. But we were still looking for that alignment, and we did take that into consideration.
And we often looked through the ladder too, like while they were doing it, we tried to kind of flip through and see what was coming as well.
And because the activities are conveniently posted on the BBC, we were able to see what would be coming up and check if that would align to the objective.
And then I would also challenge you to not just consider, in this case, we were looking at we were looking at the term of activities more literal. If you think about your flow of delivery, think of modeling in the I do is still an activity.
Yeah, true.
But that wasn't the focal point for here. That's a very good question. Okay?